what we want to do is get ourselves mentioned on there. So hedge against some of the changes in user behavior and customer behavior when it comes to their search. And so how do you get them is by essentially getting other authoritative sites in your space to talk about your brand. Sounds familiar. Yeah. But now certain type of content pieces are more valuable now. For example, listicles, top green tea brands, product reviews, Mighty Leaf review, comparison guides, Mighty Leaf versus Tazo.
Step into the world of success with your brand amplified, the ultimate podcast designed to unravel the intricacies of thriving businesses. I'm your host, Annika Jackson, and I'm on a mission to uncover the stories, strategies, and secrets that have propelled entrepreneurs and business leaders to success. I was just telling Farzad Rashidi, founder of Respona.com, that he's a hard man to find biographical information on after looking at his Substack, the forum that his team filled out, his website, his LinkedIn. There's not much except about his product. So, Farzad, you are very on brand with the work that you're trying to put out in the world. But before we get into that, which is a solution that I think probably everybody who's listening right now, and many more who I can think of, needs, I want to talk about your background and how you got into the world of SEO, backlinks, using AI, all of these fun things that are still so important in today's ecosystem.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate that. I'm a big fan of your podcast. Been following you for quite a number of months now, I guess. So just to kind of give you some background, have you heard of Visme before, the other platform? You might have seen it around.
I've seen it, but I don't know too much about it.
Yeah. So I started my career in marketing working at another software company called Visme. And so for folks who don't know what it is, it's a platform where you can create branded content for your business, like presentations, infographics, and whatnot. Started around the same time as Canva back in 2013. And then the founder, Payman, who's my business partner actually at Respona, he took a different approach. He went and bootstrapped the business instead of raising money. So obviously, Canva took over the whole world, but Visme kind of found their own niche and they focused more on the business side of things. So they kind of pivoted towards B2B. And so they've done well for themselves. So I actually joined as the first marketing hire at Visme. I cold emailed the founder back in the day when the product was early. And I was like, hey, I'm a marketing major student and I would love to help out. And then he was like, well, sure, you can start, but we can't pay you anything. I was like, that's all right. I'm just here for the experience. So there was literally just a few engineers working at the company. So I came in and then we set up some basic stuff. But then also my main job was to figure out how can we bring more customers in the door. And, for a software company at the time, obviously there's a few different channels that a lot of people do. One is ads. It was getting to the point where, because they use a bidding system, Google Ads and Facebook and whatnot, they become very expensive. So for a product that, for example, at the time, I think we were charging $20 a month or something like that. It just wouldn't make sense compared to our LTV to acquire customers through that channel. Plus, it's a never-ending black hole. You kind of have to keep pouring cash into it. And so it wasn't very sustainable for a bootstrap company. And we looked into cold outreach, tried out going door to door. And obviously, again, unit economics wouldn't make sense. Conversion rates are extremely low. So for some of the higher ticket items, it makes sense for folks to go and hire, US-based sales staff, but just wouldn't make sense for a product that we wanted to get some volume in. So essentially, what we decided to do was to start positioning us so that when people are looking for a solution like ours, they will come and organically find us. And, it's not quite as clear cut. There's a lot of investment seeds you have to kind of put into place for it to bear fruit over time. So that's why a lot of people don't do it. It's easy for ads, you put in money in and then you get conversions out. You can kind of calculate the numbers and your CAC to LTV ratio and all these fancy terms. And it's easier for a lot of big companies just to focus on that. But then what we ended up, what our competitive advantage was that we were comfortable with not being able to track everything that we do and instead invest in channels where we knew how our customers were acquiring a product like ours. And we were like, okay, how do we position ourselves to show up in those places? And so that process we're happy to give you more details on what we ended up doing, But that resulted in that idea for Responder because we built that tool internally in-house to kind of help our brand to show up in places where we wanted customer or where our customers were hanging out. And we decided to release it as a standalone product. So I actually shifted over to Responder back in 2019 and the rest is history.
Amazing. So this was because you have your, bachelor's in business administration, you have a master's in organizational leadership. This was your first job, essentially, in your field.
Yeah.
And
And then kind of evolved into becoming a director level person there not because I was qualified or knew what I was doing, more so a matter of me just being the only person there who knew how everything worked. So
but you grew it organically. I mean, and you were able to grow the business organically. And honestly, I mean, that's the best learning there is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I got to learn on the job. A lot of these things, you can't really learn through academia because things change rapidly. So it is difficult to kind of learn these unless you're actually implementing them in real life.
So talk to us about Respona today. What does it look like? What does it do?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So what we were doing at Visme at the time was basically putting out a lot of blog posts and landing pages. When people talk about SEO, they think of keyword research, content writing, blog posts, and those were the things that we were doing. And then what we ended up essentially implementing was just that. And so we put out a bunch of these pages, spent months doing it, and guess what happened?
What?
Nothing. It was absolutely crickets. So we end up getting no traffic coming to our website, which was discouraging because, we'd spent all this time and resources building out this nice, fancy site structure and optimized the site for site speed and, made sure it's responsive and the content was good and all the good stuff that you can think of when it comes to, properly structuring a website. The key ingredient that was missing was getting external validation. So the way these search engines like Google work, and that's exactly how they became the prominent search player, was by similar to how academic journals, like how academic articles are judged by the number of citations they get. So they implemented that sort of logic with web results because they were basically measuring how other people in your space are talking about you, mentioning you. And then the more authoritative those sources were, then that means that you're a more credible resource. Therefore, they prioritize you in the search results. And that's a very difficult thing to cheat because you can't just stuff keywords on your page and try to manipulate the algorithms because that's how, before Google came about, that's how a lot of the search engines were. They were just basically looking up by keyword frequency on a page. So you could theoretically spin up a site, put a bunch of pages, stuff a bunch of keywords, and then it will rank. So that's how Google improved their search quality or search result quality, and then took over the market. And obviously that opened door for because marketers ruin everything. So it opened doors to a lot of malpractice and stuff that they fixed over time. So essentially nowadays the way these search engines work is that you actually need other credible websites in your space to talk about you. And so that process was easier, I would say, said than done, because how do you get somebody else to talk about you?
Yeah.
And so it's a very difficult thing. So that sort of sparked the idea for Responder because we were contacting a lot of websites, trying to collaborate with them. And that's part of the reason why I'm here. It's like, you have a very popular podcast. Besides the fact that I'm a fan, it is also helpful for the business, for an authoritative source in our space, in the marketing space like you, like Annika, to vouch for our company. And so essentially putting your name out there when it comes to the business helps with kind of getting some of these references and citations. And that process was sort of done manually at the time. We were kind of dealing with spreadsheets and like, who do we reach out to? Who's the right person? What's their email? How do we contact them? So we put it all together into an internal software to kind of help automate a lot of the work, dirty work. And obviously, we have humans that kind of take care of the actual relationship building and quality control. And that process sort of basically resulted in the product that Responder is today, which is an outreach software for marketing teams and agencies to help get the brands out there and get backlinks and external citations from authoritative websites.
You just hit something that's so important. And there are so many companies out there that do lead gen and cold outreach. And maybe it's effective for some people, but I know I hate getting spammed in that way. So, but thinking about how to make it relate to the person in a deeper way, how to do it more effectively, I think is really important. And to be able to find places like my podcast where you have an expertise that I want to have on and share with people, and then, I'm going to have the links on my website. We're going to have social media posts about it. We're going to send you a whole folder of assets and fun stuff so that you can promote it as well. And it's not just about the link, but it's also about the relationship that we have now, where now I can tell people a little bit about your product. I can share it with my students. I can share it with people I know who is, hey, this could be a solution for the issue that you're having right now when maybe you're a new product or whatever the case may be. And so obviously I'm a fan of the product as well, and really looking forward to testing it out for some different projects that I'm working on, or that people that I know who are doing projects that I want to help them
I
propel
appreciate that.
further. So moving from using it internally to now having it be an external product, what was that shift like? Did it take a lot to let people know about the product and get people on as first users, first movers?
Yeah. Oh my God. Those days, I haven't thought about them in a long time. But yeah, so what I did was, for our initial push, I actually started writing a book called Marketing Strategies We Used to Grow Visme to 4 million users. And that was at the time 4 million. Now they have, I think, 30 million plus users. And so I basically outlined step by step all the stuff that we did. And that at the end of the ebook was like, hey, by the way, we built a tool that kind of helped us streamline a lot of these workflows. Come and check it out. And then we distributed that ebook through a bunch of communities. I think like 10,000 downloads or something like that. And so that was nice. And then we gathered like a decent email list from that ebook. And these were people that were warm because I obviously had known the business and me, because I was author of that book. So we used that essentially to launch the tool and then start getting some early customers in. And then we made the mistake of not charging for it at the beginning, which is terrible because people don't take it seriously or spend enough time to give you actual feedback. So again, getting that flywheel of getting actual customers and conversions, that was a whole nother thing. But at least getting the product in the hands of the users and customers to actually start experimenting with. And that was the initial idea.
Nice. And how did you convert people from freemium to paid?
So it wasn't freemium. It was basically like a extended free trial. And so it was, okay, I think we got a few conversions. We got our first conversion, I think the first month we released a tool, which is great. But then, it wasn't so much about getting customers. It was more about retaining them, because one of the biggest challenges we've faced throughout the history of our company, is not a new issue, has been we have been trying to automate and make the processes seamless and easy as possible, but it still is an outward software in and out of itself. And so it still requires a human to come in and, launch campaigns, come up with ideas and manage replies and get it to the finish line. And a lot of us are busy and, we've got a business to run. So it's not something that we ideally, want to spend time on. So retention was a big problem. So what we did, and especially with AI being advanced enough that it can actually make good decisions, so we built a brand new version of our product, and we would call it the Done For You product, which is essentially human-assisted, AI-powered human-assisted product, where we essentially come and ask you like, hey, what pages on your site do you want to promote? And then you set a budget, and then essentially you only pay per result. So that we're very excited about that. So we're officially launching that in December. And so hopefully by the time this episode comes out, it's out. So we do the entire work for our customers, and you only pay for placements. So it's essentially, we are paying for the result of the product and not just a monthly subscription like how normal SaaS companies are. And so we launched that in March to our closed group of beta customers that we slowly started essentially switching everyone over to the new product. And it's been very successful. So we're very excited about that, because essentially it gets rid of that extra time that a person actually has to spend to get things going.
Yeah. Amazing. So who is a typical customer? Because I know Visme has shifted to a B2B model. And are you B2B, B2C?
Yeah, so our customer base is just two segments. About 50 to 60% of our customers are marketing agencies that offer these type of work to their customers. So they're using us as a back-end layer. So their customers vary. essentially from e-commerce to software to B2B to B2C products and anywhere, professional services, lawyers, doctors, and anywhere in between. And so usually those customers don't have a marketing team that would take this on. So they usually delegate this type of work to an agency, and an agency wants the actual end product. So they come to us and we do the work for them. And then they essentially add their markup and include as part of a package to the clients. So that's a big part. And then we have about 40 to 50% of our customers that are in-house SEO teams. And so these are teams that usually are from more tech companies because they're more tech savvy in terms of knowing how to get SEO to work, for example, versus a doctor's office. So those in-house SEO teams usually use us for getting those external citations. One big change that's happened recently is with these AI search engines like ChatGPT and Google AI overviews, which is sort of changing the dynamic. So the way we go about things. And so happy to dive into that. But yeah, so that's kind of the ICP.
Yeah, thank you. And that is something I want to dive into because I have had people come on and say the LLMs are searching Google page 20. They're searching for the actual reviews from people. Like you said, the external validation, not just what you're saying about yourself. But then we've also heard now Google is cutting the LLMs off at a certain point so that there's a conflict there. So I'd love to hear about what you're hearing in the market, what you're seeing in the market right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So LLMs is a different user interface for a search engine. The principles remain the same. So ChatGPT has built their own in-house Google, basically, that they use to look through the web pages and index the web, regardless of the fact. So essentially, back in the day, the point of link building, getting external citations was that, hey, we have a website. We did keyword research and put together a landing page or a blog post, and we want to get it up in the search results. So getting to page 1 ranking was the number one goal. So you would need other authoritative websites in your space to link back to that specific page to get it up in the search results. Now, the way LLMs work, so because why? The reason why you want to get it up in the search results, because majority of people, the way go about their day when they're searching for information is that they go on Google, look for a sentence, and then they look through the top 10 search results, click on one, and you get traffic that way. Now, that's slowly changing. So, when you are looking for a product, now you're looking at multiple sources. And one of those important sources now, especially for a lot of companies, is ChatGPT. And now with Google, even trying to compete with them and basically creating these AI overviews at the top of the search results. So the way these LLMs work, so the LLMs inherently is a token prediction technology. You could say that it's embedded knowledge, but that hallucinates a lot, and it's not something that's entirely reliable when it comes to asking for or information, because it parrots back information that may not be correct. So what these engines do now, so Google AI overviews and ChatGPT and whatnot, they actually do search the web. So they go and so they break down, so it's called query fan out, so that, you ask it, hey, for example, what are some of the best green tea brands that I can buy? And so it looks up best green tea brands so this is, for example, it starts a search like that, and it goes through a bunch of different search results, maybe 16 or 20 of them, and then finds the ones that are more frequently mentioned on ideally more credible resources, and then goes and reads more reviews about each one. Okay. One of them is the one I'm drinking is Mighty Leaf. Okay. Well, let's look up Mighty Leaf reviews and then figure out what people are saying about them or what other websites have written about them. Mm-hmm. And so there's a multi-tiered approach to finding out. And then essentially the end product is an answer. It may or may not have citations to other resources, but it comes up with popular brands. So the question now has become, how do you get these LLMs to talk about you? And so Ahrefs, actually a company in our space, for folks who are familiar, did a study on what's the number one correlating factor with these AI answers. And the number one factor is branded web mentions, which is what I call link building 2.0. So it's no longer for that purpose. Again, majority of sites, organic traffic still comes from traditional 10 blue links in Google. So, but that, let's say in the next 5 to 10 years, when, those AI answers drive the vast majority of the traffic, what we want to do is get ourselves mentioned on there. So hedge against some of the changes in user behavior and customer behavior when it comes to their search. And so how do you get them is by essentially getting other authoritative sites in your space to talk about your brand. Sounds familiar.
Yeah.
But now certain type of content pieces are more valuable now. For example, listicles, top green tea brands, product reviews, Mighty Leaf review, comparison guides, Mighty Leaf versus Tazo. And so different types of content pieces that are more likely to be referenced by these LLMs. But it's no longer enough to get your own site to come up in the search results. A lot of the times, actually, LLMs ignore them. Like if you're writing a listicle on your own site on best green tea, and then it's mightyleaf.com, and Mighty Leaf is the number one option.
Yeah, that's
It doesn't take a genius to put together. So they actually even ignore them if you look at the chain of thoughts and reasoning, which makes sense because that's how humans would do it, right? They're just making our lives easier by doing what a human would do just in an automated fashion. So getting more websites, for example, websites in the health niche or in the wellness industry to talk about your brand and mention you as part of these listicles, and then getting these branded placements not only has value because you still are linked back to your site, and that also helps these crawlers to pass on what I call the link equity. So it still has traditional SEO value, but also now it's more important than ever to make sure that the context that these links or these mentions, even whether or not they're linked or not, and are talking positive about your brand and actually getting seeded into the training data for these LLMs. And also when they pull information, you're much more likely to show up by being frequently mentioned. So that's kind of the strategy. Again, a lot of the principles remain the same. Slight tweaks to the strategies and different, I would say, slightly different weights on how you would distribute that resource. But essentially, the principles remains pretty much the same.
Yeah. And I want you to tell a story, but before you do that, I mean, I saw that, and I sometimes mention this with my own website and podcast. I couldn't get the .com because somebody else had it for Your Brand Amplified, redirecting it to their brand company in Australia. And it wasn't because I kept posting about my podcast and Your Brand Amplified, right? But it was other people sharing the episodes that eventually took over Google, and the person gave up the .com, so I was able to get it because .co is fine, but .com is better. So that is a great example of this link building and other people saying that this podcast is worthy. And I know that you've used the system to also find the right platforms like podcasts and things to be on, if I'm not mistaken, from looking at some of your posts. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about some of the personal case studies, that personal/professional, right? Because you're doing this for the good of the company as well as your own expertise.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So going as a guest on podcasts, a great start. Again, I don't necessarily look at it from a marketing perspective because there are easier things you could do versus,
True.
So I do it personally. I do it because I like to meet smart people in the industry, much like yourself, and build relationships this way, which is great. But this is something that it just serves as an example of the type of thing that you could do as a small business owner, is that, if you don't have resources to reach out to other sites and get a ton of placements that way, you could ideally have your expertise shared on other people's podcasts or other interview platforms. So that way you're essentially helping them create an episode or create content. And then you also get essentially exposure to their audience. And so this is something that unfortunately is not very scalable because, you have only so many hours throughout the day. And, that's something that I used to do a lot more often back in the day. And that, obviously, as the company grows and you get busy, with other things that come up, have to kind of limit that. But that's a great way to also jumpstart a lot of the new, I would say, so if you write a book or have a sort of a new company started after exiting, for example, your previous company, or have a new product coming, like, for example, Respona releasing their our done for you product. So these are great excuses to use to kind of jumpstart that podcast tour again and kind of go on different platforms and help the podcast producers create good content. And then also, as a benefit, kind of get some of these mentions and citations back to the website.
What would you say is one of the most surprising things that you've found, going essentially from school to a company to now being a co-founder, right? And just being in the mix and being right there at the forefront of all of these technology changes, seeing the industry change from the time that you started until now. So what would be something that surprises you the most at this time?
I think this is something that I find a lot of folks experience also when it comes to business, where kind of have that shiny object syndrome, where you're attracted to the next big thing, and I kind of start diluting things, panicking, especially with AI in our industry, in the SEO industry, because things are evolving, changing very rapidly. But I keep coming back to the same principles, where if you actually have a product or service that people want, so you do actually provide value to your customers. Marketing essentially is just putting the right products in front of the right people. So getting
At the
that
right
part
time, I'll say.
exactly at the right time, right? And so in our case, the right time being when they're looking for it to show up, instead of you going on 1,000 doors, knock on them, and then maybe one of them it's the right time. So for us, essentially, it's a matter of, okay, how do we get our product in hands of the people that we know we can provide value to? And if it's an actually valuable product or service, then that process shouldn't be that difficult. It's just a matter of knowing where that person hangs out and how they search for, a solution like yours, like whether or not, first of all, if they're aware of a problem that you're solving, and if so, where they're searching for that information. And then optimizing for your business or for your product or service to show up in those places. Then you're essentially creating this cycle where when somebody's looking for a software or a solution or a service or a podcast, you show up in the right place to where they're looking at. And if you have a actually useful product or service, that would come and sign up or become a customer and start using it. And none of these will work without one another. Now, the mediums changed a lot. Back in the day, it was big to, focus on Web 2.0 and user-generated content. And then now there's AI, and then all these other sort of ties that come. And you got to move and evolve with them, obviously. And the principles still remain the same. And I think it just creates a lot of panic for a lot of business owners and marketers that they essentially are like, oh my God, we're going to go out of business because of this. And, we have heard people say SEO is dead, AI killed it. And so there's a lot of, I would say, fluff that you kind of have to learn over time to ignore. And it's just part of maturing as a person in business, that you kind of get a sense for, okay, when you see a bunch of these cycles happen, you kind of get a sense for, hey, maybe sticking to the principles and kind of doing good work is the hardest thing to do. And usually most of the times the right answer.
Yeah. Surprise, right? Putting out a product that is valuable and that's actually good is important. So you are delivering a new service. Are you also going to have the option for people who still want to have more of their hands tied into to development?
Yeah, absolutely. So that would be something that we always kind of keep improving and working on. And then the new products also built on top of that same foundation as the digital products. They go hand in hand together, but it usually is a way for us to just expand on our service, not to replace existing ones. It's more so saying that, hey, if you don't have the time to do it, don't want to, take a risk by hiring someone and end up spending your time to do the work, we could just do it for you. And then you only pay for essentially guaranteed placements, which makes it a no-brainer. So we found that it just creates a better customer experience, but it's always going to be a segment of our audience where they're like, no, I do want to be involved. I do want to do the work. And there's always going to be a solution for them as well.
Yeah. You have some great case studies on your website as well. You mentioned about half your audience or your end user it's a marketing agency that needs assistance, and the other half is in-house SEO. And I'm seeing things like 100,000 monthly organic traffic increase in 6 months for Fitness Network. Amazing. Backlinks, lots and lots of backlinks, outreach, productivity. Do you have a favorite story that you want to share with us?
Right. So first of all, I'd like to have a disclaimer that a lot of we take very little credit on a lot of the cases we've done. And SEO is a puzzle. There's a lot of parts that you have to do for it to work. And so just using a service like Respond isn't going to be the solution to all of your problems. So they've done great work. I think I know the case that you were referring to, Generation Honor. They've done an excellent job of creating a lot of great useful content and, optimizing their sites and, listening to their customers, all that good stuff. And then, yes, they use Respond also to build some external validation and citation. So they all kind of go hand in hand together. So obviously, it's easy for us to take credit, but, it's important to also realize that, that there's other elements involved. But in terms of the use cases, so one of the, I would say, easier examples is like a marketing agency that basically was, so they had a large average team and they were doing this at a very massive scale. So they were basically reaching out to, I want to say, tens of thousands of websites each month and kind of coordinating, negotiating with the publishers, with different site owners. And so that company started doing a pilot with us with our new product, with the Done For You product. And even though it's pay-per result and they're getting a ton of results, you would think that it would become way more expensive. And so we ended up actually calculating that, okay, if you actually calculate the salary of the team members that are making this work, plus sometimes some publishers have editorial fees, or there might be other types of incentives you use and during the process, plus the cost of the software tools you need to actually use, Respond included. And then you divvy that up by the number of results you get. And then you compare that with us doing it for you. And so they actually ran the numbers and they were like, hey, this actually is significantly more affordable for us to just do nothing. So they were like, oh, this is quite interesting, because you would think that as the volume goes up, you end up getting economics of scale. And there is an element to that, but we are, essentially capitalizing on a lot of our infrastructure on the do-yourself side. We have a good database of sites that we've gathered, and so a lot of those factors. So it just makes me very hopeful and I feel very positive about our future, because we see that we're definitely moving towards the right direction with our product and our tool set. And so this is something that we're very excited about. And so that one is a recent one. We haven't released it publicly yet, but we have done a case study with them actually on our do-yourself side. But so this would be a new one that hopefully we're going to release in the new year.
Yeah, fantastic. You've talked a lot about how the methodologies, right? Whether it's a blog post, on-page SEO, appearing on podcasts, getting reviews, other ways to link to and get third-party validation. We talked about that, but we also talked about how you still have to have a great product. You have to reach the right person at the right time when they're ready to buy, in the right methods, ways that they're searching. Are there any predictions that you have for the next year? Because things are moving so quickly. I know, for instance, for my teaching last semester, we talked about user-generated content in one of my classes versus professionally produced content. And we mentioned AI, but then this term, AI-generated content, is that third pillar. And I have to weave it through every single thing that we talk about. It's not just and there's this other category that's still up and coming. So I'd love to hear any predictions that you have for the next, and that, I know that can be hard, 6 months, a year, where you see things going in this world.
I'm looking at this from a data perspective, because I follow a lot of studies from companies in our industry that we look up to. And one thing that's very clear is just the way consumers, so whether or not B2B or B2C, are searching for information is changing. So that's not to say that it's going to happen overnight, like what a lot of people think it's happening. I think it's a gradual shift over time where essentially you are delegating a lot of your decision-making and your thinking process to machines, because essentially with these LLMs operating more like a human than a machine, because it's a neural network. That's how we think and make decisions. It's not quite as 0 and 1, and like it used to be, as clear cut computer code. And now these computers can actually make decisions and do things that was not possible before. I think we're going to continuously become more reliant on them making decisions for us in business and in life. I even find myself, not have completely lost my ability to trust my writing anymore. Like I write an email reply and I'm like, okay, let me run it by Claude, or OpenAI, I'm like, can you improve this? And then sometimes it spits back something that sounds like nothing like me, it just reiterates a lot of the same stuff that I've said. But that just tells me that I trust that brain more than I trust mine. And that happens, I think, more and more in any of the decisions we're going to make. And so as consumers, now we're also going to be more reliant on that information as well. So when you're asking these LLMs information about recommendations, hey, I'm taking a trip, what should I do? What are some of the fun things I should, explore in this new city? Or what are some of the new products I got to get, buy? And so I could see that research is kind of becoming delegated, or that research is essentially getting delegated to these LLMs. And so it's an interesting time for marketers to now not only cater to humans, but now to these bots and essentially scripts that is scraping the websites. And now it's becoming more important than ever how you manage your reputation online, because essentially it's no longer just what shows up in the search results and it's easily viewable, but also deep down who's talking about you on Reddit and some subreddit that somebody posted 2 years ago. So yeah, it becomes a very interesting battle now to kind of figure out what these LLMs care about and try to optimize for it. But yeah, so that's sort of the prediction I see, is like that's us kind of delegating a lot of that decision making.
Yeah. So continuation of where we're at right now. Farzad, do you have a favorite quote, mantra, verse, family, poem, motto?
This is from my business partner, Paymon, actually. He's the founder of Visme, and he said something that stuck with me because I'm the type of person who wants to constantly move fast and, it's very impatient. And he said that good things take time. And that stuck with me because, it's often easy to kind of get discouraged when you're working on something and it's not quite moving quite as quickly as you want it to. And it gets frustrating. And kind of keeping that in mind in a way kind of helps you, like, oh yeah, maybe if it's just something that's taking time, probably something that's worth doing. so yeah, that would be my favorite quote.
Nice. Yeah, I appreciate that. It can be really hard when you have that personality. You want to just go, but often we do have to take a step back, test something, and then review the data, like you said earlier. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining the show. Looking forward to your next product launch and seeing what else you're doing and staying in touch. Certainly. It's one of my favorite parts, is not only the value that my audience gets, but the value I get and the new relationship that I get out of this as well. So thank you, Farzad.
It is absolutely my pleasure. Thank you again for having me, Annika. It was a pleasure meeting you. And yeah, it was a lovely conversation.
Amazing. And thank you to everybody who's watching this episode or listening to it. Leave us a rating review. Check out the links in the show notes so you can learn more about Respona and the work that Farzad and his team are doing. Until then, have a beautiful day. Enjoy being outside. Enjoy the sunshine. If you're somewhere, I'm looking out and the sun is peeking out a little bit, or the changes in the weather. You East Coasters, you get the leaves changing and all that fun stuff. But don't forget that, yes, we are living in a very much digital world, but we also need to touch grass sometimes and use tools like Respona to help us in our digital world a little bit better so we can have more time to enjoy the outside world. Thanks for listening or watching to this episode of Your Brand Amplified. Don't forget to leave us a rating or review on your favorite podcast listening platform. And if you want to learn more, check us out at yourbrandamplified.com.